we will start from the services which typically today's discussion is more on the managed services portfolio what we offer from Merino. And if we look at, there are a couple of segments as we define the managed services offerings are. And it is IT infrastructure optimization, cyber security, it's information security part, analytics where we come and do the BI and the analytics part for data analytics, integration of multiple different heterogeneous platforms which the customer has today. And then there are DevOps. I will touch base in between a little bit onto the physical security part and how we do visual analytics on that, and how can we enhance existing CCTV kind of installations what the customer has with facial recognitions, etc. So when you look at that IT management, the cloud services, today it's almost every customer is living in a hybrid world. Hybrid world, what I mean that we use some part which is on a public cloud, some part which is on a private cloud of the customer, and something is on premises as well. So most of the customers today have a mix of this environment, and that is where there are a whole lot of things which happens when customers are even on a virtualized environment inside the on premises or on a private cloud. From there, moving on to the cloud, it is a Amazon or Azure cloud or any other third-party cloud infrastructure. And that is where the cloud migration is not just moving it there. So we do have, starting from a consulting and readiness, moving the infrastructure, moving the applications, databases, and most of the time we find that it ends up becoming in a hybrid scenario. So we do consulting, we do provide the readiness assessment, the study, and then deployment of that as a turnkey if needed by the customer. So these are typically, for each customer it's different, and based on the customer requirement, this gets done accordingly. Optimization and re-architecturing. When people, they move to cloud, after moving there are a whole lot of possibilities to re-engineering and re-architecting that to make it more efficient. We have multiple customers where they have latency issues. In some parts of the world, they can access it better. From other part of the world, they cannot access it fine. For typically for global customers, those kind of issues will come. Even for people who are not global, there are the balance between what you do in Azure or a Amazon cloud, and when you move where do you put your archive, where do you put your backup, where do you manage your backup services. Now backup, how much of the data backup, what you need as online backup, what you need as an archive, which you need once in a while, or more for security work. These are different kind of scenarios. For each customer is again different, and there is always a room. After a couple of years of using it on a cloud, you will realize as a customer that there will be room to do this testing, and many times once you do the capacity right sizing, it adds substantial savings to the cost of the company, from the cost of ownership and efficiency purposes, both put together. Then it comes as a managed services. So for a lot of customers, they want to see their network being, the entire infrastructure being managed. What I mean by managed is that starting typically like a NOC service. So from the NOC, the whole network across wherever they are spread, they are managed, and they are started from that perspective. And managed services includes a whole lot of things. And I will explain it to you a little later within this, that we probably are one of the very, very few providers who provides a single dashboard, not only for your infra as a managed service, it also provides within the same dashboard, we can also provide you your dashboards for your security as well as your DR. Now, DR is a very, very touchy subject, and disaster recovery planning, management, and orchestration are very key today in the world in terms of how do we manage our DR, how do I make the DR changeover as automated. There are many, many instances, and statistically it's proven that many times we do a backup, but when you try to restore the backup, it doesn't work because the backup what has happened is not right. So we also need to ensure that the backup what is happening the right backup, so that if I need, for any emergency, if I need to restore, I can restore the backup from there. So BCP, that is business continuity and planning, from the perspective of from starting from the BCP manual, that what we want to include into the BCP and the IT DR. And we can also provide DR as a service. For argument's sake, if somebody has their main data center in, say, in Riyadh, in the, hello? Yeah, sorry. So if somebody has his main data center in Riyadh, and the other, maybe it's just DR is in Dubai, how do I manage these from the cloud? How do I manage these two data centers from the cloud as a service? We can also provide DR as a service from that perspective, or backup or DR as a service as well. To many, many customers of ours, they use these services as a service, so that the advantage is that you pay as you go kind of a scenario happens on a with the proper planning. Cloud does not necessarily mean that everything is secured. And for many, many industry verticals, especially like health, healthcare, BFSI, anything to do with any kind of financial transaction, they also have to comply with all kind of compliances from the data security perspective. So cloud security is another, even if we host it into an Amazon or in AWS or Azure, still we need to look at and do our security audit and checks and the data compliance. So these are the other services on the cloud security, which is the integral part of the offerings which we can offer to the customer. Please feel free to stop in between if you want to, because I am not going into deep of any one of these. If you need to understand anything onto to a deep dive of something, please feel free to interrupt, and I'll be more than happy to explain as much as I can. So from an optimization part, this is today is very, very common that from a whatever infrastructure is anybody having, how much is that optimized? How much are we using? Are we over capacity or are we under capacity? So that is something which is very, very, very important. There it is from assessment to deployment, and based on your growth and the data growth plan, how can you manage that correctly? And when you hardware as a service or hardware as a software, so when you do these deployments, and be it a router, a switch, a backup, mobility, endpoint, whatever, all these devices needs different kind of support, different kind of monitoring in terms of security breach. If a customer wants to include some kind of DLPs, and there will always be some business applications which are custom built, something which is bought, like somebody is using an Oracle apps or an SAP or an Infor, anything like that. So these are other kind of deployment support services which we provide for any kind of rollout for that. Virtualization, VDI implementations, they are very common in today's world, and many, many customers where we do that. So as we said, that managed infrastructure services, that means we do, as I'm repeating here, starting from the NOC to your LAN, WAN, even in your facilities management, your BCP, DR, and SD-WANs, because today a whole lot of customers are moving into SD-WAN scenarios, but when they move to the SD-WAN, it is not that the entire organization moves to SD-WAN. Some part of network still remains on the classical network. Some part moves to SD-WAN. These are typical challenges that how do I manage and monitor this? How do I prioritize traffic? Because I may have branches where I have CCTV cameras, but I cannot allocate. Okay. So I mean I cannot allocate the whole bandwidth for. Is there any query from someone? Okay, sorry. So what kind of bandwidth I'm allocating for that? What time of the day? During the day, I need to have my core applications to have better bandwidth. How do I prioritize my traffic within the network based on the time of the day or based on the user who is using? If the CEO or the MD of the company is doing a video broadcast for the organization, that has to get a priority at that point in time. So how can I do that on the fly, on the real time? Okay. I can even do application specific, protocol specific prioritization and monitoring. These can be again different for different branches. Now all these services, all these we provide on the cloud. So this is something which is very unique today, and it becomes practically a usage for every company who has a hybrid network. Because you have things during the day you want to give lower priority to something as compared to something else. Your core applications or people are using their Facebook or YouTube or whatever. So you want to give that a lower priority. And we can do that granularity of application, protocol, whichever way we want to do that. Now we move to the cybersecurity part. Now cybersecurity, as we know, is a pretty large as a subject. It is an animal in itself. Okay. And when we look at cybersecurity, typically cybersecurity starts with the gap analysis, the assessment of the existing IT security, what the organization has. And there are a couple of things which happens on that. It is not only I have a perimeter firewall, I have an application firewall, I have put all of that. That does not mean necessarily that my network is secure. How I have configured that, how frequently I am putting the patches, how many IPs I have for the public facing portal. Even if there are DNS breaches which happens, how am I managing those DNS setups? And so then whatever the applications we are doing, so how are we doing the security testing or the code testing for the application software? So we do all of that services, starting from standard VAPT to the compliance related. Now, we don't certify, but we make the organization ready for certification. Be it a GDPR or PCI DSS, whatever certification the company needs, we can do that. We have a very, very strong setup, and which is a very, very technical in nature, which is on the cyber forensic. And we have customers who are state governments. Unfortunately, I can't tell the name of which are the countries where we do. And we do provide very big cyber forensic services to them. We have, in last 2 years, have built a SOC, that is Security Operating Center, for a country in Africa, and trained 100 of their people so that they can continue with their cyber forensic. Because cyber forensics from defense and government and the banking perspective is very, very critical and important, because it is not only what breach has happened, post the breach is important for them to know from where it has happened, who has done it. Okay. Even for criminal tracking, they need to do the cyber forensic, that this kind of email, this kind of message is coming from where it is originating from, etc. That could be a Facebook message, that could be a LinkedIn profile, it could be anything. So there are various levels of cyber forensic and services which we provide. Transformation integration services, that means when the customer changes the architecture, or you are doing from your on-prem to cloud or all these kind of things. So then there is a lot of integration which needs to happen. For argument's sake, the company that did not had a SIM implementation before, and now they are trying to go it and see SIM implementation. SIM basically means security incident and event management. So when you try to do that, we have to ensure that all other components are ready for the SIM to be effective in that scenario. All that kind of transformation and integration services we do provide other professional services. We are practically, in all practical purposes, when although there are some names of the vendors are mentioned at the bottom of the screen, but we are practically vendor independent, agnostic. We do work with almost every single vendor. So you may find that we are not partner for some vendor on an official partner list, but we do provide services and support on almost every security product. Last but not the least is the MSSP, as we call it, Managed Security Services Provider. That is where our SOC comes into the setup. So from the SOC, we can, depending on the customer needs, we can provide 7/24 monitoring, detection, and response and mitigation services also. A lot of customers who are typically in BFSI, that is means banking, they don't want us to do the mitigation part. They typically like to do the mitigation themselves, but they like us to do their monitoring detection. On this response and the mitigation, we have implemented and introduced quite a bit in terms of machine learning and AI. So as we keep doing the mitigation, the system keeps learning. And that learning is not only it does not remain restricted to one organization. That goes into the central AI engine. So moment it goes to central AI engine, that means those mitigation, those kind of attacks which has happened on one organization, all other organizations will benefit of that, and that kind of mitigation becomes automated. So the response time becomes much faster, and we can manage many more people because of this machine learning and AI implementation onto the SOC. And from the SOC itself, we can do all of that, including device management and DLP, data protection. The data protection has become a very big challenge. Statistically, it shows that 65% of the security breach happens because of somebody from within the organization was involved in that breach. So that fundamentally means that insiders, it is not only that we need to safeguard ourselves from outside, we also need to safeguard ourselves from internal security threats as well. This becomes extremely important scenario. And of course, along with that, the patch management for security configuration is very, very important. So as I was telling you earlier, that when we do a infrastructure management from a NOC, and we do the security from the SOC, but from a customer's perspective, they practically get it under a single dashboard. All the three functions they do, that is their infrastructure status, their security status, and their DR status. They all get all the three into that. They even get to see how we also provide services to. A lot of times what happens is that, to give an example, customer has, let's say, 50 branches, and all those 50 branches are using some kind of a Cisco router, a Fortinet firewall, and so on and so forth. But in some of these are not updated on the firmware. Some of them are not updated on the patches. Some of them are not working correctly. How do I know which of these are working fine, etc.? So we do provide that service, that we can do a complete audit of your entire IT infrastructure to see from infra and security, from both perspectives, what is the current status and what are the components which are active, which ports are working, which ports are inactive, how much of the port is utilized, how many ports are free, and so on and so forth. And this we can show on a real time, on a GUI, on the user screen. So you can, and that these things actually, if somebody says that I will give you a response time of X hours and a resolution time of Y hours, how am I going to achieve that? Do I have a magic wand to do that? No, we don't have a magic wand to do that. So these are the kind of tools which we use, which gives us the ability to provide the kind of SLA the customer is looking for. And it is not that the standard is for everybody is the same. No, it is based on the customer requirement. Then accordingly, those kind of tools are used, and that kind of service is configured for the customer. Now, if we move to the analytics and analytics as a service, so we all know at analytics now that basically the first and foremost step for us, for any analytics to become useful, is that we have to have data. We can give it any name, from a data cube, data lake, data warehousing, all kinds of names we can give, but fundamentally we need to have the data. And today the data is not only the data which we create as an organization, it also the data which people are talking about us outside the organization. That means we also have the ability to capture the data, the remarks which comes in any different kind of, most of the common, I'll not say all, but most of the common uh, social media platforms where people are talking about a good service, bad service, etc. So that those can also be captured and create the complete 360-degree view for the organization. So this capture of data is very, very important. But the data capture is not useful unless we create an typically like an ETL tool or some kind of a data cleanup tool and linking that normalization to create a funnel, create that aggregation layer so that the data becomes useful for that. Then keeping that data, because now this data is the asset of the organization. That is where the value is. That is the gold. That is your fixed asset. Now this data has to be secure. So are we using some kind of masking for the data we are storing? Are you using encryption for the data we are storing? Can access the data, in which format they can access the data? These are very, very important critical factors. It is not only seeing a dashboard. And once we store that, then we analyze and access. These could be any kind of, this could be predictive, descriptive, any experimental, any kind of analysis which can, this is what we can imagine is the scenario. We can do that. And here again, we can integrate certain amount of ML, machine learning capabilities to make this faster and more better. But it does not stop there, because we can't keep adding data. We have to sometime need to know when to purge the data. Typically, like say for a telecom company. For the telecom company, they, in country to country it varies, but most of the countries they insist that the telecom company has to keep the record for 6 or 7 years. So after 6 or 7 years, am I going to destroy the data? Am I going to keep the data? If I'm keeping the data, for what purpose, and how I am going to archive that, and how I'm going to purge it, how I'm going to delete it. The deletion process also is in a manner that it should not go to wrong hands, it should not be retrievable, it should be deleted in a manner that it cannot be used again. So these are other factors. It is not just I keep adding and I don't do anything. So that data management is another part which comes. So all of these, we are very hopeful that very shortly we will be able to announce something which is on analytics as a service on the cloud. So you as a customer, as a user, you don't need to invest big time into buying a BI tool, configure that, but from the libraries, from the different industry domains, as we will keep adding to that, you will be able to use that services, and it will give you the report based on your data wherever the data is. So we will give you the connectors, the dashboards. That part will be customized for you as per your need. They are configurable setups, and from there you will be able to access that. So it's like, as we say, that skin in the game. That means we will have our skin in the game with because today, let's say you buy a Cognos, it's a big investment. The cognos guy, the vendor will come and give you a big story that this that can do this wonders. As if once you buy this, you have no problem in the organization. Analytics will become like a cakewalk. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen that way. The cost of ownership of that, usage of that, having resources to manage that, and not only manage that and give you something when you need it. Because it is not that you can predict everything beforehand that when will I need what. Who predicted that we will be in a situation like what we are today in a scenario because of this COVID-19? Nobody predicted that. Nobody ever thought of that. So do we have a plan for that? And in this scenario, I may need completely different kind of reports as compared to completely different kind of analysis of business and forecasting compared to what I used to do before. So having the skin in the game means you are paying on a per month, per user, per report, etc. basis as you are using it. So whenever you need that, we are there 7 by 24 to provide you that support as analytics as a service. So that means you don't have any fixed cost of licenses, fixed cost of infrastructure, and fixed cost of creating something. But you have the qualified, trained domain experts and functional experts available to you to provide that service as you need it. ERP is from where the company started its journey more than 10 years back, almost 12 years back. And that is a very strong forte. So when we look at any ERP, it is a SAP, Oracle, or because ERP is not the product you have. It is the industry domain and the vertical for which you are using it. So integration, optimization of the ERPs, and how do I do that? And we do work with companies here in reassessment and organizing, re-architecting these on a outcome basis as well. That okay, when we do this for a particular industry, for a particular vertical for your company, we will ensure that this will be your saving, and you give me a part of what you save. So that is also the way we work on this kind of re-architecturing scenarios. Physical security and analytics, as I said, that I will touch base quickly on this part is coming and growing very, very fast. And there are multiple different use cases on this. I've tried to put a very, very broad picture of it right now for your understanding. And all the services I'm talking here right now, they're all available on premises or on cloud as a service. Whichever way the customer needs, they can use it. Most of the organization today has some kind of facial, some kind of CCTV installation in the organization. Now, can I enable facial recognition on the same existing cameras, whatever I have? The answer is yes. What that gives me? That gives me contactless movement. People coming to the office, they're standing in front of the door and the door opens. I don't need to do a biometric. And we all know that when I do a biometric in terms of a fingerprint, I probably put it 3 times for it to happen. And in the COVID age era, nobody wants to put their finger, touch it anywhere. Other than that, these are becoming norms in many parts of the world to many parts of the world we have these payment authorizations which are based on facial recognition. For a certain value, you can do like this. For a value more than that, when you stand in front of an ATM, that it recognizes your facial. Onboarding of a customer. Today, every bank, when we do KYC, you can see that they do a facial recognition of that. All this is part of that. Crime and criminal prevention is a very, very big subject with the facial recognition we can do. Airport security, and we can do real-time identification. Typical standard classical CCTV cameras have the ability to capture the image, but they don't have the ability to do the processing. So we actually take the image to a central unit, and from there the processing happens. So what we have done to make, and that is why it doesn't allow you to do real-time identification and real-time processing. So what we do, we add a small piece of hardware next to the CCTV camera, and that adds the processing capability into the existing camera. It's a very low-cost device which gets added to that. And that adds the processing, that adds the power. That means I can actually, even if I think of a factory or a city or a town, that when somebody is moving across from place one to place two, we can actually trace the journey real time. If because we also do ANPR, that is automatic number plate recognition for vehicles. And so even if I want to track, let us say a city is being monitored by a CCTV camera and I want to monitor a particular car movement, it can on the fly find out where the car is, if it is moving anywhere in the city, and it can track and keep telling me how it is moving. Similarly, if a person is moving within a factory, I can keep a track and see how the person is moving within the factory. We can do behavioral alerts. Behavioral alerts in the sense like, let's say, take an example for a supermarket. Somebody entering the supermarket, picking up something from the shelf and putting it into the pocket. Am I supposed to put anything in my pocket after taking it out of the shelf? No. That is not something which we are supposed to do. So that creates an alert. So we do that. If somebody is bending at a place, we can do PPE alerts, like in construction sites, in many places where people are. PPE is basically means personal protection equipment. So if somebody is supposed to wear a helmet and a jacket, anybody is not wearing a helmet in that area, it gives an alert. So all these kind of behavioral alerts we can do out of the behavioral analytics on a real time. And as I said, the existing cameras can be used. We can do parking management alerts. People do park cars and leave the car there. They come after a couple hours, leave the park up there. So this is a security threat. If somebody is leaving a car at a parking place, and so all these parking management alerts also can be done using the video analytics. And in this, we do add a whole lot of machine learning and AI into this. We can use these even for visual analytics to see if somebody has a breathing trouble, etc. All those kind of things we can do from a health monitoring perspective. Criminal investigation, forensic, we can do on that. So on an ML and AI, video analytics has huge in number of use cases. We can have a separate 1 hour session just for this to cover the different use cases which we can think of. DevOps is part and parcel of, it's not only for applications, yes, it is for application, and it is also for data. But how is your applications moving when you're deploying at multiple different locations, different versions, control, build? How do what is the architecture? Are the documentations correct? Because most of the organization application development, customization becomes very people-centric, and we end up depending on the people and the version control, what is being deployed, which one is not right. So there are different tools, like from Jenkins to Chef. There are multiple different tools. Each one of has its own plus, and including Microsoft has quite a few now. So which one is fit for which customer is a very is not, none of them, these products I can say is the best or the one that does not work. Each one of them is good in its own way. And along with this, I'll also say that there are, from an IT operations perspective, we do provide tools to automate a whole lot of processes. That is what it reduces the cost of ownership, and it gives higher value. Like, to give an example, if from an user onboarding to the day the employee leaves the organization, if the person may be having different roles, different access rights, it keeps changing. How do I do that manually? I can automate this whole process. If somebody needs an access to a particular printer to print something, it's like the menu comes exactly like on the telephone, as a mobile phone, we get a menu. The person can just click on that and say, I need to print on this printer. The workflow goes, if it requires an authorization, it automatically goes to the person who needs to authorize. He says yes, the printer driver gets installed on his laptop or on his mobile, wherever this is needed. There's no manual intervention required in that process. So there are many, many such IT ops kind of operation scenarios which we automate for the customer depending on their need. So that adds efficiency to the customer. So the value proposition, why us? If you see that from your infra to the security and applications, there are very few companies which can provide you all of that. We are not trying to go and do it for every single customer everywhere. No, we have the customers we have. You can see from here that we have more than 92% customer satisfaction, and there's a very high customer retention rate. That shows that the people who take service from us, they believe in us and they stay with us. So that is where I will say it comes. From a customer success story, there are multiple different verticals in retail, e-commerce, on BFSI, healthcare, manufacturing. Different kind of manufacturing is one of our strongest forte from all kind of offerings which we do. Automotive is another area where we have very, very huge presence globally, including in Europe and in the US. Some of the customers who are taking our services for these are not the customers who are using our ERP and other services. These are the customers which are looking at our value-added services. Some of the products which we use in different shape, size, and color, some of them are here, not all. So this is where we are. So any questions, anything which you think you need to have clarification, we'll be more than happy to clarify you on that.